meeting this man,
Mhm.
if I had met him 10 years earlier, I wouldn't have been prepared. I wouldn't have been mature enough to handle it. I would have made a mistake, but I was desperate. And
Mhm.
when you're desperate, it's like get rich or die trying. Great things will happen, right? And
Yeah.
I was desperate at the moment that I met this man. And so being 38, I was going to try like hell to make that book a success. And when you have that kind of energy and drive, it becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're going to make a success out of it. Yeah.
Told her to level me up, told her to level me up, yeah. It's time to level up. Now level up.
Yo, what's up, ladies and G's? Much love to those returning and shout out for those tuning in for the first time. I'm your host, DeAndre Evans, and today I have a very special guest. Now, this person has written so many amazing books. He's a New York's best-selling time author, not just once, not just twice, but multiple times. He's written the 48 Laws of Power, The Art of Seduction, the 33 Strategies of War, the 50th Law of Mastery, the Laws of Human Nature, and his latest, which I have right here, the Daily Laws. I have none other, you probably guessed it, Mr. Robert Greene. How are you?
I'm fine. Thanks for having me, DeAndre. My pleasure.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, again, I just want to say thank you so much for taking time out of your day. It means the world to me. And I know so many people are excited, given the fact that you're on the show. And typically, what we like to do and kick things off is like a little mini flashback. But I really want to start off with asking you, how are you truly doing right now? How are you feeling, especially in this pandemic?
Well, I'm fine. I haven't gotten COVID yet. I'm fully vaccinated and boosted. But my life is pretty much always been kind of quarantining. It's a little bit odd to say that, but as a writer, I pretty much, am in my office writing day in and day out. I don't go out very much. I don't go to the clubs or things like that. So it wasn't a big shift for me. And I hate to say it, it's going to sound very crass, but in Los Angeles, for a while, it was actually a little bit nice because there was no traffic. The
Mm,
streets were quiet. It was kind of, beautiful out. I could go into the park and there were no people or anything. Of
mhm.
course, I understand the human toll this has had, but I've been fine. I had my own health issues prior to the pandemic, which I'm dealing with, but I've been fine.
Good, good. I'm glad to hear that. You look amazing. You
Oh,
know,
well, thank you. Well,
uh,
that's the best. Thank you.
absolutely, absolutely. And like I say, I did actually go out and buy your book, The Daily Laws, which I honestly love.
Well, we should have sent you a copy. That's terrible. I'm very sorry to hear that.
No, it's fine. It's the least I can
Uh,
do.
uh,
Taking time out to support. So I really appreciate it. I haven't necessarily read all 400 plus pages as of yet. However, I can tell you that I am enjoying it, and I would love to ask you a couple questions about the book
sure, sure.
in detail a little bit here, because I know as I was reading it on page 9, the very first thing that really stuck out to me was that at the very bottom of it, specifically, you said at the age of 36, right? You had many jobs. I was bouncing around from place to place, and you kind of seem lost in what to do. And
Right.
so I would love to ask you, how did you find your way, and how did you find what you call your life's task?
Well, it wasn't easy. It wasn't like a straight line. It was kind of like a zigzag, going back and forth, a lot of kind of missteps and mistakes and things maybe I shouldn't have done.
Mhm.
But essentially, I knew since I was very young that I wanted to be a writer. And my quest, my journey in life was to figure out what kind of writing I was meant to do. I was always very good at writing in high school and university, but how are you going to make a living? What was I going to do with this potential skill? Because that's all it was. So I tried journalism in New York in the early 80s. I didn't like that. That wasn't my kind of thing because I like sort of something that's work that's kind of timeless. And journalism was all about what happened today. That's all they were interested in. And then I left and I went and lived in Europe for 4 or 5 years. I did so many different jobs. I couldn't even begin to tell you how many different jobs I had. I was trying to write novels. I was having a great time. I was meeting a lot of beautiful young women. I was learning languages. I was having incredible experiences. Um, but I wasn't nothing was really, I couldn't settle on still what it was I was meant to write.
Mm,
Then I came back to Los Angeles, where I was from, and I thought I'd get into Hollywood and maybe I'd be a screenwriter. I could make a lot of money that way, and I could, it could be interesting and fun. That didn't work out for me because I'm somebody who's kind of likes to control what they do. I like to, be able to own what I actually created. In Hollywood, you don't own anything. You're just basically a servant. As a writer, nobody respects really the writer.
mm,
So I was kind of unhappy, and we're talking about 1995, 96.
mhm,
I had many different jobs. As you say, I felt lost. I felt depressed. And just by coincidence, I was in Italy for a job and I met a man
mm,
who was a packager of books. And one day we were walking in Venice, Italy, and he asked me if I had any ideas for a book. And it was by far the turning point in my life, because I realized, yeah, maybe writing books was what I was meant to do. Maybe not novels, but maybe nonfiction. And I kind of improvised that day what would turn into the 48 laws of power, right? I don't know where it came from. It's one of those moments in life where something just sort of comes to you.
right.
You don't question it, it's there.
Mhm,
It came from all of my experiences in life, all of the horrible bosses I had, all of the scheming colleagues, all of the crap I'd seen in Hollywood with all the manipulations, the Machiavellian games. So it was just my life's experience. It just came up out of me. I improvised this. He got very excited and he said he would pay me to live while I wrote the book. Well, essentially, the lesson that I tell people is you should never give up, first of all, because I didn't have any success until I was in my very late 30s,
mhm,
even in 40 years old, to be honest.
mhm,
And so I was very depressed, but I never gave up. I kept trying and trying and trying and trying and trying.
yeah,
But the main thing is you have to have a sense of direction in life. You have to have an idea of what you're suited for. Is it music? Is it writing? Is it sports? Is it connecting? Is it social things? Is it, social movements and being an activist? What is it that draws you in here? What connects to you emotionally? It makes you feel like this is something that I want to do, that I love, that I can get connected to. It doesn't mean no job is perfect. Writing can be very painful. You have to be alone a lot. You have to be very disciplined,
right. Mhm,
um, so nothing is perfect, but if you're connected to it, if it feels like something that you were born to do,
yeah,
that you were destined for from a very early age, it's the most powerful feeling in the world.
yeah.
It's like you're swimming in the ocean, and if you don't know what you're doing, you're swimming against the current and all the waves are hitting you and you're swallowing water and it's painful and you're going to drown.
Mhm,
But if you kind of know what you want in life, you're kind of moving with the current, everything's easy and more natural. And
mhm,
eventually you're going to find what you're meant to do. So the point is to never give up, but to try and find some sense of direction, some sense of purpose to your life. And you have to kind of examine who you are, examine who you were when you were very young. It's what I wrote about in my book, Mastery. And I'm kind of,
yeah.
that was sort of my personal experience.
I love to hear that. And I think that's so powerful. Going with that flow and that state of knowing who you are first off as a person, because I feel like growing up as a young kid, you're kind of pulled in multiple directions to a certain degree. Like, don't do this, sit down, be still. And it's like all these rules. And then when you get out there in the real world, it's like you can kind of make up and create your own life in a sense.
Right.
And what I really take from that is that you kind of had this calling, like someone was pulling you in one direction while you was working multiple jobs. It was like, no, let's do this instead. Do you know what that specific feeling or thing was? Have you identified what that was?
It's weird. I mean, if you want to get mystical, there is almost a sense of destiny to it.
Mm,
Because if I look back on my life, everything kind of fell into place the way it should have been.
mm,
Of course, at the time, I didn't realize it. At the time, I felt kind of lost and concerned and worried about myself. But
mm,
in retrospect, it all happened for a purpose. So the main thing is you want to go through life with your eyes open. You're learning, right? Life is an adventure. It's not this kind of boring thing where you have where, you're only living for pleasure or for video games or whatever distractions.
Mhm.
It's an adventure. You're trying to find yourself as well, right?
Right.
So you have to keep an open spirit and you have to keep exploring and trying different things.
Mhm.
So my path in life was to open up and explore and have a lot of different adventures and have fun as well
Mhm.
in the process. But in the end, you know, it was sort of meant to happen in a way,
Yeah.
because meeting this man,
Mhm.
if I had met him 10 years earlier, I wouldn't have been prepared. I wouldn't have been mature enough to handle it. I would have made a mistake, but I was desperate. And
Mhm.
when you're desperate, it's like get rich or die trying. When you're desperate, great things will happen, right? And
Yeah.
I was desperate at the moment that I met this man. And so being 38, I was going to try like hell to make that book a success. And when you have that kind of energy and drive, it becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're going
Mhm.
to make a success out of it. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. I love that. I love that. And I hope everyone listening is taking some copious notes because you said a lot. You said a lot that a lot of people can take and run with for the rest of the year, really. But I know you said something recently and it stood out to me just now about just knowing yourself in a direction that you need to be pulled towards. But what would be like some advice you would give to those young men and women out there who are trying to find their own direction as well? Like what traits or skill sets would you recommend them to, acquire over their time?
Well, everybody's different. So the
Mhm.
main thing you got to do is you got to stop listening to other people,
Mhm.
right? You got to get off social media. I mean, social media is fine. It's very interesting. It's fun. You need to have a presence on there.
Yeah.
But you got to stop listening to what other people are doing, to what your parents are telling you, what you're doing, what your friends are telling you, what's cool and what's not cool. And you have to look at yourself and you have to examine who you are and
Mhm.
what makes you different. And so
Mhm.
many people nowadays are afraid of what makes them different, right? They're afraid of what I call their weirdness. I'm a strange person. I'm weird. I have very weird tastes, right? And I knew it when I was a child. I never really quite fit into anything, you know? And you can be afraid of that when you grow up because everyone is kind of can criticize you for being so different. But what makes you unique, what makes you different, what makes you stand out, what people may have criticized for you when you were very young is your source of power. Look at all the people that you might respect in this world. Maybe it's great writers, maybe it's great musicians, hip hop artists or painters or politicians. Every single one of them you can say is one of a kind. They're unique.
Mhm.
There's never been anybody else out there like them. They've able to figure out what is different about them and use that. So what you need to do in your life is first of all, stop listening to other people. Don't listen to your parents. Don't listen to your teachers. Don't listen to your friends. Turn into yourself, trust yourself, and examine when you were a child, before
Mhm.
everybody started pushing you around, before everybody started telling you who you are,
Right.
what you need to do,
Right.
who you were when you were 4, 5, 6 years old. What were those things that excited you, that
Mhm.
made you feel like I am naturally drawn to this? So it could be physical things. It could be dance, or it could be sports, or it could be like writing and words, or
Mhm.
it could be mathematical patterns and music, or it could be science. Whatever it is, you have to know that at least about yourself. So
Mhm.
there's no like, I can't tell people there's one direction in your life. It depends on who you are,
Right.
what I call your primal inclinations. I
Mhm.
think the best place to be in this world right now is to be an entrepreneur, to have control over your own destiny,
Right.
right? So you're not working for somebody else.
Mhm.
Some people aren't comfortable with that, but I think it's an ultimate position of power to have in this world where you work for yourself, you create your own time, you're able to, kind of do what you want to do, and you feel connected and you feel like your sense of purpose and destiny is fulfilled through this particular task,
Mhm.
and you don't have somebody telling you what to do day in and day out.
Right.
But you have to figure out what is the best way avenue to get towards that, and you need to know yourself. You need to know who you are, to know what makes you different, and stop paying attention to what other people are telling you.
Absolutely. Well, you just shut down the entire podcast right there, Robert.
Okay, okay.
No, that was awesome.
All
I
right.
love that. I love that advice. And it's so funny because I just did a Instagram reel talking about something similar when it comes to, not listening to everyone. And I said that you had to create boundaries. And you're like solidifying that, for me, which is awesome, but also for those out there who need to hear it in a different way. And I really appreciate that because I think it is important in order to, obviously live out your life's purpose and what you want to accomplish. But, I'm very curious because, you've accomplished so much in your life and you're still going to this very day, which I love and admire. Like, what drives you now? Like, what gets Robert up out the bed? Like, what's the motive? What's really pushing you?
Well, there are books that I want to write before I die. None of us live forever, and I'm getting older, and I know that I don't have 50 more years to live because that would take me well past 100. So I know my time is limited, right?
Mhm.
And I want to, before I die, I want to write certain books, right? I want to express certain things that mean a lot to me, that go back to when I was very young, to ideas that I think are very important for other people, because my main purpose in life is helping people through my books. It's always been my main motivation. It's never been the money, although I enjoy the money, but it's mostly I love helping people deal with the very difficult aspects of being a human being in this world.
Mhm.
So I want to write more books before I die. And so I'm writing a book now, my eighth book, which is something I've been meaning to write for many years.
Mhm.
It's very personal to me. And I tell myself, Robert, you can't die before you finish this book. You've got to get it out there. So it gets me up in the morning. It gets me
Mhm.
excited.
Mhm.
I still, of course, take risks.
Right.
It's not like I'm just living here just so nothing ever happens to me,
Right.
you know.
Mhm.
But basically, that's what drives me in the morning. It gets me up going, you've got to finish this book. You might get in a car accident tomorrow or something might happen.
Mhm.
How tragic that would be. So I am very, very motivated every day to work on these different projects. And DeAndre, if I didn't have something to write, if I woke up and I go, I don't know what to do today,
Mhm.
I think I would have committed suicide by now, because I've had moments like that before in life, and I get very depressed. So that's why it's so important to kind of figure out what you were meant to do in life. So you have that feeling that when you wake up, it's your task, it's your destiny. You were meant to do this. It kind of gives you the energy and the drive to get going every single day.
Mhm. Absolutely. I love that. I love that. And like I said, I know I don't have you long, but I really do appreciate your time. And one thing that, stood out as you were speaking there, just giving your track record of what you've accomplished, like, do we have a name for the book yet? And do we have a date? No pressure.
Oh, it's all right. It's all right. I feel the pressure anyway. Um, well, the book is about what I call the sublime, and it's something I wrote a book with 50 Cent,
Mhm.
and it was the subject of the 10th chapter in that book. It was also the subject of the 18th chapter in the laws of human nature. So it's something I've written about before, but I'm dedicating a whole book to it. And I wouldn't say it's a book of mine that's maybe the most sort of spiritual in a way, because I do believe that there's something else that our lives were meant to accomplish. I know that might sound weird for the guy who wrote the 48 Laws of Power, because I am kind of an earthy type person,
Mhm.
but this is an element of an experience that I think is missing for a lot of people in the world today. And the sublime is basically anything that takes you outside of your day-to-day life, the banality of your day-to-day affairs, your routines in the day, your job, and you're exposed to how incredibly awesome and strange it is to be a human being alive in the year 2022. It's actually, if you think about it, the weirdest, strangest, most surreal thing that you can imagine, to look out and see the sky the way it is, to be here on a podcast with DeAndre. You know, the world is very strange, it's very weird, but we don't think of it that we take everything that we do for so much for granted, right? And the purpose of this book is to open you up to the world kind of felt like when you were a child, when things weren't so familiar, when you took things for granted, when you didn't take things for granted. and the world was kind of mysterious.
Mhm.
So a lot of it has to do with science, things that people are discovering in science. But it's a book that means a lot because 3 years ago, I came this close to dying myself. You know, I had a stroke.
Mhm.
And if my wife hadn't been in the car when I was driving, I would be dead right now, or I would have severe brain damage. So I'm extremely lucky and blessed to be alive. And having a near death experience is kind of the ultimate in the sublime. You know, it makes you change how you look at everything. So that's sort of what this book is about. And then I'm also, you know, starting to think about my next book after that because I never stop thinking, you know.
I love it. I love it. The ball in the game doesn't stop. It keeps rolling.
That's right. That's right.
Keeps going. I love to hear that. Well, I know so many people are excited and can't wait for that to come out. But ladies and gentlemen, if
Oh,
you haven't already, definitely pick up the Daily Laws for sure.
yeah. Oh, and in the daily laws, in the
Mhm.
month of December, so the daily laws is organized as a calendar.
Right.
Each day is a passage just meant to meditate on to help you in your day-to-day trials
Mhm.
with people, with yourself, with the world, with your job and your career.
Mhm.
And the month of December is sort of about what I just talked about. It's the month of the sublime. And there are passages from the new book, right? And from other areas where I've talked about that. So you will find part of this book in the month of December for in the daily laws.
Love it. Love it. Look at that gym, ladies and gentlemen.
That
Can't wait.
Jim?
Yes, a big gym, something that people can take and run with.
Oh, I
Yeah.
see. Okay. Okay.
Right. Little
All right.
lingo, little lingo.
Okay.
I love it. I love it. Well, Mr. Green, like I say, it's been an honor and a pleasure. I
Uh-huh.
don't want to take up too much of your time. I only had you for about 15, 20 minutes and I'm running over. But
I can go a little bit longer if you wanted to. It's up to
yeah,
you, though.
absolutely. Absolutely. I'm enjoying the conversation. If you're okay with it, I'm okay with
Okay.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So yeah, I would love to ask you though, however, um, growing up, obviously as young Robert, coming to the man who you are today, like who had the greatest impact on your life and how did that really affect your confidence growing up?
Well, my father had a big impact only in the sense of he wasn't an intellectual. He was basically a salesman his whole life. He worked his whole
Mhm.
life at one job. So we came from a very middle class background.
Mhm.
But he was very calm and he was very good with people,
Mhm.
right? And so that kind of helped me. I learned a lot from him just in dealing with people, I think, you know, and knowing how to navigate social worlds. But then I had a teacher in high school. Um, I thought I was the greatest writer in the world. I was 16 years old. I thought, man, I'm it. You know, I am. This is people need to bow down and realize what a great writer I am. I turned in an essay that I thought was the thing. I thought it was fantastic.
Right.
He gave me a terrible grade on it. There was red pencil all over it. And he basically taught me a lesson about writing that I've never forgotten. It's a lesson about life, really. He
Right.
said, Robert, the point of writing is not for you to just express yourself, it's to communicate your ideas. You have to imagine that there's somebody reading it, and you have to be able to get inside their mindset and communicate your ideas to them. So don't go on with all of this flowery language that's about your ego, but drop your ego and try and get inside the work itself and in the writing. It totally changed my whole approach to writing. As you know, I'm not into like talking about myself
Mhm.
or to having a lot of flowery language. I like things that are kind of still and quiet and direct that express the ideas very directly. He had a huge impact on me, right? And then
Mhm.
other people as well, you know, like when I was 25 years old, I was in New York, I was a journalist, and I turned in an article that once again I thought was fantastic. And the editor had lunch with me one day. He invited me to lunch, and I thought he was going to compliment me.
Mhm.
And basically, after he was kind of drinking a lot, and basically he told me, Robert, the reason I called you for this lunch is to tell you you are not a writer. You are not a good writer. You should get out of the field. You should go into business school. You should go to law school, do something else.
Mhm.
You don't have the discipline. You don't have the material for being a good writer. And I didn't listen to him. I basically, gave my finger to this guy. I said, I was polite because I'm never impolite, but I took what he said at face value. Like, maybe what he means is I'm not right for journalism, but I know I'm a great writer. I know I have talent. I know I have skill. It's just not being applied in the right way.
Mm.
And so I learned, I grew a tough skin about me. I learned that I can take criticism and sort of distinguish between what is real, like what is important to me, and what is just bullshit, what is just being, I think he was envious of me in some way. So you have to be tough in this world. You have to be able to take criticism. You have to be able to hear other people say nasty things about you and know how to deal with it, know what is true, because you need to sometimes correct yourself, and what isn't true. So that had a big impact on my life in a negative way. And then there were other people like the man I mentioned that I met in Italy who completely changed my life. So I've had a lot of people who've helped me along the way in that path that I was describing. But those would kind of be the major influences.
I love that. I love that. Wow, that's very impactful too, and an eye opener. I think it's always refreshing to hear stories from those who, like I say, accomplished so much, but those at the same time people look up to. Like a lot of people look up to you. They love you. They love what you do and what you've accomplished. And to hear your backstory from that, I think is very refreshing. So we appreciate you for that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, like I said, you say we have more time, which I can ask you 5,000 questions. So this should be fun.
Okay. I don't have time forever, but I have more time.
Right. And so I would love to ask you, given this moment of a pandemic, right? We're getting ready to approach Valentine's Day. And I know a lot of listeners may come at me if I don't ask you this question when it comes to love and the power of seduction and things of that nature. So for those singles out there who are looking to get in relationships, looking to become, linked and married in this time, like what advice would you give them to begin to present themselves in the proper way to attract their ideal mate or significant other?
Well, we live in a different time than when I wrote The Art of Seduction, because so many things have to do with like Tinder and online dating, things that it's not part of my world when I was growing up. But so a lot of people don't understand sort of basics of seduction because they're so used to things being digital and being generated by algorithms, etc. But the main thing to understand is the person that you're trying to seduce, that you want to have a relationship with, is an individual, okay? They come from their own background. They come from a different city, perhaps. They come from perhaps a different socioeconomic background, a different cultural background, etc. If you're straight, they're of a different gender. So they're different. They're an individual. They have their own world. They're not you. They didn't grow up with you. They don't have your values. They don't have your thoughts. They're a separate being that you must respect and understand. So the degree that you treat them as an individual, and what that means is you take time to understand their world, what makes them tick, what gets them excited, what kind of gift will actually mean something to them personally, not because it's expensive, but it's kind of geared towards their spirit. If you get into who they are, what makes them tick, and you can get a sense of what it's like to be them, even though sometimes that's hard, that is the most seductive power in the world. Because we go through our lives where people are never paying attention to us. They're never dealing with us as an individual. They're looking at us and they're projecting onto us, or they're treating us like they've treated everybody else. How often do you ever get that feeling, even from your mother or father, sometimes maybe not, where they're looking at you and they're going, you're not me, you're a different person. I'm interested in you as you are. It's very rare, right? But we're hungry for it. That's what creates a great relationship. That's what creates true seductive power. Get outside of yourself and your own ego and your own needs and desires and get in their world. And it's actually very therapeutic because it gets you outside of your own problems and worries and concerns, right?
Absolutely.
And the feeling that the other person has, like that they sense that you're listening to their words, that you're making that effort, that you're interested in them, you'll bring down all of their natural resistance, all of their wariness, all of their defensiveness.
Right.
I mean, I can go into other aspects for several hours now about seduction, but that's the single most important skill that you can have in any kind of relationship, whether it's just a sexual encounter for a few weeks or whether it's really a long-term relationship, is to have fun with it, to not take it so seriously and personally, and to feel like it's about entering their world, entering their spirit. That's the main thing that I would say.
I love that. I love that. And everything that you just said resonates deeply with me because I am a young single. And obviously, I would love to be married one day. Absolutely. And so, what I took from that is to be more interested in someone versus being interesting, per se, versus worrying
Yeah,
about what I do and talk about what I've,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
et
yeah.
cetera. Right. And also to be a great listener. I feel like that's a skill set or a trait most people, tend to throw in the back, overshadow or don't think too much about it. But I feel like that's part of the best way to communicate effectively and to build something upon a foundation like that.
Well, to be a good listener, because a lot of people talk about that, but the truth of it is
Mhm.
you have to find the other person interesting in order to want to listen to them. So if you don't find them very interesting, if you find yourself more interesting than them, you're going to be constantly thinking about your own thoughts, your own world, your own problems, what you're going to do tomorrow. But you have to look at that person and go, they are interesting. They have experiences, they have ideas. Even if I don't really like them, even if there's no connection, I can learn something from them because they have something to teach me. There's something different about them, right? So it's not just listening, it's the fact that you want to listen, that you're excited about that other person that makes you listen on a deeper level. So
Definitely.
like if it, on a very banal level, if
Mhm.
you're listening deeply to them and you're not just superficially listening,
Mhm.
you'll pick up certain things that they say that reflect certain desires they have that have never been satisfied, certain things that get them excited. And then if later that evening or the next day, you bring that up in the course of a conversation, just as if it just occurred to you, but it shows that you were listening, that you heard them, and then in a casual conversation, you bring up that topic or that desire of theirs, then it's incredibly seductive because it meant, wow, DeAndre was actually listening to me. He actually heard that. He actually paid attention. You'll
Absolutely.
have her eating out of your hand, I guarantee you.
Well, when that day comes, I'm calling you and I'm saying thank you.
Um, okay, you're very welcome.
But however, like I say, I definitely appreciate everything you've done for the community, for everyone, especially with the books that you've written. And I would love to ask you one final question, if I could.
Sure,
Um,
no
you
problem.
know, given the span of your lifetime, all the books that you've written, like, has there been any big challenge that, came into your life between the first book and the very last book so far? And if so, how have you overcome that?
Well, I did have one very big challenge, and it happened with the book that I did with 50 Cent, believe it or not.
Mm.
I don't normally, do books with other people because I mentioned before I'm a control freak. I like to own what I write, and I don't like partnerships. But I got into this because I met 50. This is back in 2005, 2006, I think. And we had a nice connection. We connected on a very human level. We were both interested in the same things. And I actually really, really liked him. He's an amazing person. So we decided to do a book together and we sell the book to a company that had a deal with him, Simon and Schuster. And I'm very nervous about this because, he's a lot more famous than I am. He still is, obviously. And I wanted to respect him, and I wanted to be a book that kind of, that expressed who he is, right? He'd already written an autobiography, which is a really good book called From Pieces to Weight. That's a great book. But what happened was I was too respectful of 50. I was too worried about him liking it. And so the book came out and it was sort of really, really about him and about his business model and his ideas, etc. And I was kind of late in delivering it. And basically, at one point, Simon and Schuster said, "We're canceling this project. We're not publishing it." And first of all, that would be a very big blow on my career, personally and professionally. But I think deep down, they canceled it because it actually wasn't very good, right? It wasn't my best writing. It wasn't. So the lesson was, so my agent said, "All right, Robert, we're gonna rescue this. We're gonna find another publisher." And they found another publisher, and he read the manuscript and he said, "Robert, the problem with this is it's too much 50 and there's not enough you in the book. You have to bring your own world, your own ideas, and bring them together. There has to be more of Robert Greene in this book. And you've made a mistake by being too much about 50's life." And I go, "Okay, you're right. I can take criticism. I can realize I made a mistake." And then I had to step back and I had to go, "All right, I have to redo this book. So what is this book about? As opposed to being about 50's business philosophy,
Mhm.
how is it more my idea?" And I go, "Well, there's the 48 laws of power."
Yeah.
And, in my books, I kind of describe the source of people's power in the world. What is the source of 50's power? And in thinking about it and in talking to him, I decided it was his fearlessness, the fact that he was nearly killed. He was shot 9 times from, close up, right through his jaw, nearly died. He picked himself back up, and he's not a thug. He's actually a very sweet person, but he is a monster when it comes to getting things done. He is completely fearless. I mean, if you've almost been killed, what are you going to be afraid of in life? It
Right.
gives him tremendous power.
Yeah.
All right, that's what this book should be about. It should be a meditation using 50 as kind of the center on fearlessness. The new publisher says, "Yes, that's great, Robert, do it." I go, "Phew." Then he says, "Robert, but the bad news is you have only 6 months to get it in." And I go, "What? I have to create this whole book
Wow.
from scratch and get it done in 6 months? That's impossible. There's no way I can do it." And he goes, "Well, it's either that or there's no book."
Yeah.
I go, "Damn it, I can't do this. All right, but I have no choice. As I
Mhm.
said before, get rich or die trying. Write this book in 6 months or you fail."
Mhm.
And I did.
Wow.
I managed. And I think it's a really good book, and it's been very popular, and 50 loves it. But that proved to me that I can take failure, I can look that in the face and not let it bother me or crush me, but find a way to make something better out of it, to move on, to create out of the bad circumstances, to do what 50 calls in the hood, turn shit into sugar. So I turned shit into sugar that way, right?
Yeah.
And it taught me that I'm stronger than I think I am. I can do these things. It gave me a tremendous boost in self-confidence. So that I think is the best example of what you asked me for.
That's powerful. Absolutely. Definitely, definitely. And I love that. I love that breakdown and insight. And I know so many people can take and apply that, just having that killer instinct to, attack, to go forward, to not settle, even when your back is against the wall, because you had a tight timeline of 6 months. And like you said, that was like nearly impossible. But we all know impossible is only impossible until you do it.
Yeah,
So, and you did it. So you
yeah,
broke it.
yeah. Well, what happens is when you only have 6 months, it's what I call in my war book the death ground strategy.
Mhm.
Your back is against the wall. So it means you're going to fight much harder. And because I only had 6 months, I had to be so focused and so energized that it actually made the writing even better in the long run. So everything kind of tends to work out for the best if that's your attitude towards life. That's always been my attitude.
Well, I love it. And I'm so grateful that you're here. And I'm glad that you was able to, create so many amazing books. I'm going to read them all. I'm still working through a couple. I'm not going to lie, but I'm going to get
Okay,
it
okay.
done and I'm going to let you know.
Uh,
But I just want to say thank you again, Mr. Green, so much for taking
oh,
time out of your day to join us on Level Up Daily. It means the world to us. And I would love to know, and everyone else, where can they follow you? Where can they find you and contact you?
well, my main website is robertgreenofficial.com. That's all one word, Robert Greene, Green with an E at the end, official.com. There you'll find links to my Instagram, to Twitter, to Facebook, and to my old website and my old blog posts that I used to do, and to all of my YouTube interviews. It's sort of the gateway to everything. And then there's also an email address where you can reach me. And please understand, if I don't respond or I don't respond right away, I'm incredibly busy right now. I do try and get back to people in some way, but I love hearing receiving your emails that tell me, Robert, I love you. Robert, I hate you for this reason, whatever. I just love reading those emails. So please, I encourage you to write me.
But ladies and gentlemen, there you have it, Mr. Robert Greene. Don't worry, I'll put all that information down below in the description so you don't have to miss that information. But please be sure to go show love and support to Robert Greene. Check him out on his socials. And again, if you haven't already copped the new book, The Daily Laws, go do so. It's amazing so far. I'm actually on page 26, which is very ironic because it's the 26th of January.
Oh, okay,
And
okay.
I am slowly getting through, and I'm loving it every step of the way. So again, thank you so much, Mr. Greene. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me, DeAndre. My pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely. And so until next time, guys, much love, peace, and blessings.
Told her to level me up, yeah. It's time to level up. Now level up.